One flight attendant kicks black girl off plane. 7 minutes later, she owns the airline. It was supposed to be the happiest day of Ebony Rogers' life. Just 18 years old, she had worked tirelessly over the past 4 years to graduate top of her high school class in Atlanta, Georgia. Her hard work culminated in a full-ride scholarship to one of the most prestigious design schools in the country, and now she was on her way to Los Angeles to receive an award for a youth innovation project that she'd spearheaded. As Ebony stepped into the bustling terminal at John F. Kennedy International Airport, JFK, her heart pounded with excitement. She was about to board a flight on Sky Traverse Airways, a company she'd never flown with before but had heard decent things about. Little did she know that the events of that morning would spiral into a bizarre, heartbreaking and ultimately triumphant saga that would change her life and the airline forever. Ebony and her mother, Regina, arrived at JFK after a red-eye connection from Atlanta. They were both weary from traveling through the night, but Ebony's enthusiasm held her upright. She clutched a battered leather portfolio containing sketches, notes, and invention mock-ups that had won her that coveted scholarship. Regina, proud and protective, tried to calm her daughter's nerves as they scoured the terminal for their gate. "Are you sure you've got everything, baby?" Regina asked, gently smoothing Ebony's hair, which was braided into neat cornrows. She knew Ebony was a perfectionist, prone to bouts of anxiety when something important was about to happen. "I've got it all," Ebony replied, hugging her portfolio tighter. "Tickets, ID, phone, scholarship papers, it's all here. I just hope the flight is on time. I can't miss the ceremony. If I don't get there by this afternoon, I'll miss my chance to speak." Regina smiled. "You've planned this for months. Everything is going to be fine." The airport was buzzing with people of all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds. Ebony usually found that invigorating. She loved the idea of thousands of stories colliding in one place. This morning, though, she was tired and on edge. She kept checking her phone, her eyes flitting between the flight schedule on the overhead boards and the boarding pass in her hand. Finally, they reached Gate 23A, a quiet corner of the massive terminal. Her flight to Los Angeles was still listed as on time. Ebony sighed in relief as she and Regina settled into 2 cold plastic seats by the window. "We made it," she whispered. As the minutes ticked by, Ebony sensed the adrenaline coursing through her. The ceremony in Los Angeles was crucial. She'd be receiving an award from a panel of CEOs representing multiple industries, including technology, sustainable design, and philanthropic ventures. She'd even heard rumors that celebrities like Ava DuVernay and Pharrell Williams might attend. Ebony had never been to California before. Her mind spun with images of palm trees, beaches, and the bright city lights she'd only seen on TV. Regina checked her watch. "They should start boarding soon. Maybe we should line up," she suggested. Other passengers were doing the same, forming a long but orderly queue. Ebony hefted her small carry-on bag, making sure her portfolio was secure inside. Her mother had to fly back to Atlanta after seeing Ebony off because of her job, so Ebony would be traveling alone. They shared a quick hug and a reassurance. Regina promised to follow Ebony's achievements via live streaming and phone updates. Eventually, Ebony stood in line, ticket and ID in hand, feeling a small wave of excitement overshadow her fatigue. She noticed a flight attendant standing near the entrance to the jet bridge, scanning boarding passes. Her name tag read C. Hill. The woman wore the crisp navy blue Sky Traverse uniform, a red scarf tied smartly around her neck. Initially, Ebony found her expression unreadable, but as the line slowly advanced, Ebony saw subtle irritations flicker across the flight attendant's face. She seemed impatient, or maybe exhausted from the early shift. When it was Ebony's turn, she offered a polite smile. "Good morning," Ebony said softly, handing over her boarding pass. The flight attendant barely acknowledged her greeting, scanning the pass with a perfunctory beep. "You're in 12A," she said curtly. Then, spotting Ebony's portfolio bag, she added, "We have limited overhead space. You might have to check that." "Oh, this is a small bag. It should fit under the seat," Ebony replied. The flight attendant's tone had made Ebony momentarily anxious. She didn't want to cause any trouble, especially with her precious portfolio inside. But the flight attendant sighed. "Move along," she barked, as though Ebony was holding up the line. Ebony flinched at the sharpness in the woman's voice and hustled forward down the jet bridge, eager to get to her seat before any further tension arose. The flight itself was packed. Ebony found her seat next to a window, stowed her small bag under the seat, and clutched the portfolio to her chest, unwilling to part with it for a second. She breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that she'd made it on board with no real problems, apart from the flight attendant's brusqueness. But Ebony was too excited about her journey to dwell on the negativity. She plugged in her headphones, scrolling through her phone for some relaxing music. Moments later, a tall man with a heavy briefcase arrived to claim the seat next to her. He greeted Ebony politely, and she replied with a friendly nod. Just as Ebony was settling in, flight attendant C. Hill reappeared, her eyes scanning the overhead compartments. Her gaze fell on Ebony's row. Ebony noticed the flight attendant's lips form a thin line as she spotted Ebony's portfolio on her lap. "You need to put that item in the overhead bin or under the seat in front of you," she announced, pointing at the portfolio. "It won't fit under the seat," Ebony explained quickly. "It's got delicate items inside. Is it okay if I just keep it on my lap until takeoff? I promise it's not big, and I don't want it jostled." The man seated next to Ebony glanced over at the portfolio, which was about the size of a slim laptop case, definitely not bulky. "It's not bothering me," he said, hoping to smooth things over. The flight attendant's eyes narrowed. "It needs to be stowed. Do we have a problem here?" Ebony felt her heart pound. "No, ma'am," she whispered, forcing herself to remain calm. "I'll place it carefully under the seat." She gingerly slid it forward. There was still enough legroom for her to manage, though it stuck out slightly. The flight attendant gave a disdainful snort, then moved on. Ebony heard a passenger behind her mutter, "Wow, she's in a mood today." Ebony tried to breathe normally, telling herself it was just pre-flight stress. She had no idea that this was just the beginning of her troubles. Sky Traverse 627 was scheduled to depart in 15 minutes. Ebony began flipping through her phone to find the seatbelt demonstration video she'd saved from the airline's website. She was a stickler for safety. She was also curious. Ebony had once toyed with the idea of designing user-friendly safety pamphlets or more engaging in-flight videos as part of her design projects. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the flight attendant returning until the woman was looming over her row again. "You there?" The flight attendant addressed Ebony abruptly. "You need to power off your phone." Ebony glanced around. Many other passengers were still using electronic devices. She kept her tone calm. "I'm sorry, I was just finishing up." C. Hill planted her hands on her hips. "You have a real attitude, don't you? I've asked you twice now to follow instructions." The man in the seat next to Ebony raised an eyebrow. "She's not the only one using a phone," he pointed out. "I'm just saying lots of people are still on them." The flight attendant shot him a look that practically sizzled with anger. "Sir, this is between me and this passenger." She turned back to Ebony and folded her arms. "I'm going to have to ask you to gather your things. I will not tolerate disruption or non-compliance on my aircraft." Ebony's breath caught in her throat. "I'm not being disruptive," she said in a shaky voice. "I promise I was just about to power it off. It's not even takeoff time yet." C. Hill's face hardened. "That's enough," she declared. Then she leaned closer, her voice quiet but dripping with an accusation Ebony recognized all too well. "I don't like your attitude, and I don't feel comfortable with you on board. Now gather your stuff." Ebony felt the sting of tears behind her eyes. This was surreal, as though she'd stumbled into some dreadful alternate universe. Around them, passengers started whispering, eyes darting from Ebony to the flight attendant. Some looked outraged. Others seemed relieved they weren't the ones being targeted. But Ebony had never been one to cower in the face of injustice. She found her voice. "This is completely uncalled for," she said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "I've done nothing wrong." But the flight attendant pressed a call button, summoning another crew member who swiftly arrived. In a matter of seconds, Ebony's fate was sealed. "She's refusing to follow crew instructions," C. Hill said. "We need her off the plane." At that, Ebony's pulse pounded in her ears. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She felt singled out, cornered, and powerless. For a moment, she wanted to scream, but she remembered the hundreds of hours she'd spent working toward her scholarship, the unwavering support of her mother, the hope of her future. Her voice quivered. "Please, I have somewhere to be. I have a scholarship event in Los Angeles. I have to get there." "You can take it up with the gate agent," C. Hill snapped. "Now, off." She turned on her heel, not waiting for Ebony to respond. Tears threatened to spill from Ebony's eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of that flight attendant. An uneasy hush fell over the plane as Ebony unbuckled her seatbelt. Her seatmate tried to intervene. "This is ridiculous. She did nothing wrong," he exclaimed. "Sir, sit down before you're removed too," the flight attendant warned, her voice cold. Ebony clutched her portfolio and slowly made her way down the aisle, aware of the stares of the other passengers. Some averted their gaze, while others watched her with sympathy. Each step felt like a blow to her dignity. She could have argued, but Ebony feared any further protest would make matters worse or get her arrested. Her ticket, her dream, her sense of worth, all felt dangerously fragile in that moment. When she emerged back into the jet bridge, Ebony found a gate agent waiting, confused by the unexpected scenario. Regina, who was moments away from leaving the airport, rushed over as soon as she realized something was wrong. Ebony's eyes finally released a flood of tears, and Regina held her close. "They kicked me off, Mom," Ebony whispered, her voice cracking. "They said I was being non-compliant, but I wasn't. I was just using my phone like everyone else." As Ebony explained what had happened, the gate agent's expression grew troubled. "I'm so sorry," the agent muttered. "I wasn't informed of the details, just that the flight attendant wanted you off." Regina looked at her watch. The flight was scheduled to depart in less than 10 minutes. Ebony's chance to get to her ceremony on time was slipping away. She faced the gate agent, her voice trembling with urgency. "Is there any way to let her back on? My daughter has a crucial event in Los Angeles. She's done nothing wrong." The gate agent gave Ebony a long, sympathetic look, then shook her head. "I don't have the authority to override a flight attendant's decision if they claim the passenger posed a safety risk or was non-compliant. The flight's about to depart anyway, and reboarding would cause a delay." Regina exhaled sharply, anger painting her features. But Ebony simply felt numb, drained of the excitement and hope she'd carried with her that morning. She stared down at her portfolio, the one tangible symbol of her hard work. Could this be happening? Would she miss the biggest opportunity of her life because of one hostile flight attendant? Then, from behind the gate agent, a man in a dark suit approached with urgency. "I couldn't help over here," he said. "I'm Darius Gray, Vice President of Public Relations for Skytraverse. Is there an issue I can help resolve?" His tone was calm but firm, the practiced neutrality of a corporate mediator. His eyes flicked between Ebony, Regina, and the gate agent. Regina wasted no time. She explained what had happened in hushed but heated detail. Ebony's first encounter with the flight attendant, the tension over the phone usage, the humiliating and sudden ejection from the flight. Darius Gray listened intently, concern clouding his face. "This young lady's scholarship opportunity is time-sensitive," Regina finished, voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. "Your flight attendant singled her out. This is outrageous." Darius rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture of stress. "I understand. I truly apologize for your experience. Let me see if I can get you on the next Skytraverse flight, or possibly arrange something with a partner airline if it'll get you there faster. We do have alliances that sometimes help with last-minute rebookings." Ebony let out a shaky breath. She appreciated the gesture, but she could feel the clock ticking. The next flight might not land in Los Angeles until after her ceremony was over. "Please, if you can find anything that arrives before 3 p.m. local time," Ebony begged. "I can't be late." Darius nodded. "I'll do my best." He glanced at his phone, typing frantically as he walked away from the gate, telling them he'd be in touch momentarily. In the crush of the moment, Ebony recalled that she wasn't just some poor student with big dreams. She was also the daughter of a well-connected entrepreneur. Her father, Edward Rogers, had built his wealth in tech startups and philanthropic ventures. Though Ebony prided herself on earning her own achievements, she knew her father might have resources to help her out of this crisis. She unlocked her phone and dialed him in a panic. "Dad?" Ebony's voice shook. "They just kicked me off the plane for no reason. I'm stuck at JFK. I'm going to miss the ceremony." Edward's voice, calm but urgent, came through the line. "Slow down, honey. Tell me exactly what happened." Ebony recounted the story as best she could through her tears. Edward listened without interruption, and when she finished, his tone was steely. "I'm on it," he said. "Give me a moment to make a few calls." Regina stared at Ebony, a puzzled look on her face. Ebony swallowed her pride. She rarely used her father's influence to solve personal problems, but this felt different. This was a matter of justice and a direct threat to her once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It wasn't just a cancelled flight or a minor inconvenience. It was blatant mistreatment that cut to the core. Darius Gray returned, tapping frantically on his phone. "The next direct flight is oversold," he explained. "I'm trying to see if I can upgrade someone and shuffle seats around, or if we can partner with another airline that can get you into LAX by 2:30 p.m. He gave Ebony a quick glance. "My sincerest apologies, Miss Rogers." Ebony pressed her phone to her ear, waiting to see if her father would call back. The minutes felt like hours. A swirl of thoughts hammered through her mind. She wanted to stand up for herself, but also needed to board another flight as soon as possible. She considered the possibility of making it just in time for the ceremony, but a gnawing fear of missing it altogether made her stomach twist. Then, after 7 long minutes, she counted each second on her phone. Edward called back. Ebony's heart pounded. "I've just spoken with the CEO of Skyline Ventures," he said, naming one of the major investment groups that had a controlling interest in Sky Traverse Airways. "They've been looking at an injection of capital for the airline, or a potential buyout. I'm an old friend of one of their key investors. We've come to an agreement that if a major share acquisition happens, I'd be included in that group." Ebony blinked, confused by the corporate jargon. "Dad, that's nice, but how does that help me get to Los Angeles today?" Edward's voice was steady, but there was a hint of triumph Ebony rarely heard from him. "It means the people who sign that flight attendant's paycheck now know who you are, Ebony. More importantly, they care about their reputation. If everything goes through, we might have a direct stake in the airline. In simpler terms, you're about to have the power to make some very big decisions regarding Sky Traverse, like who they hire and who they fire." Ebony's pulse thundered. "I don't understand." "They want me to expedite the capital injection purchase, a controlling share on the spot. I told them I'd only consider it if they fix this mess for you, immediately. This kind of negotiation has been brewing for weeks, and the timing is uncanny. The board has an emergency teleconference in 20 minutes to finalize details. If all goes well, Ebony, you'll own a significant stake in Sky Traverse by the end of the hour." Ebony could barely speak. A part of her thought it was too outlandish to be true. Her father, poised to become part owner of the very airline that had just humiliated her. Darius Gray's phone buzzed. He picked up, listened for a moment, and his eyes widened. He promptly glanced at Ebony with a new kind of respect, maybe even a hint of fear. "I understand, sir," he said into the phone. Then he hung up, stepping closer to Ebony and Regina. "I just received a directive from the highest levels of management," he announced quietly. "We're to accommodate you on a private charter that leaves in 20 minutes, all expenses paid. You'll arrive in Los Angeles by 1:30 p.m. Regina's jaw dropped. Ebony just stared, her mind struggling to process. "A private charter?" Ebony repeated. Darius nodded, clearing his throat. "Yes, ma'am, that's correct." He paused, then added, "I was informed your father is in the process of negotiating a significant deal with Skyline Ventures, our majority stakeholder." Ebony gulped. So this was real. She saw the relief on Regina's face, but also the flicker of indignation that it took such extraordinary measures to correct what never should have happened. Yet Ebony couldn't deny the wave of gratitude that washed over her. "Thank you," Ebony said, her voice still shaky. "I need to get to Los Angeles as soon as possible." "Please follow me," Darius instructed. "I'll personally escort you to the charter terminal." Regina clung to Ebony's arm, reluctant to leave her daughter in such a whirlwind. But Ebony insisted that Regina should head home to rest, having travelled all night. "I'll be okay, Mom," she said, hugging her tight. "I'll call you once I land." Regina finally agreed, though she looked none too happy about the situation. As Ebony gathered her bag, she couldn't help but glance back at the gate to the plane that had just ejected her. Through the windows, she caught a glimpse of Flight Attendant C. Hill inside the aircraft, presumably going about her duties, oblivious to how events had suddenly turned. Ebony felt a strange mix of anger and pity. She wouldn't wish job loss on anyone, but she also couldn't overlook the humiliating, racially charged manner in which the flight attendant had treated her. While Ebony was ushered to the charter area, Edward Rogers was on a conference call with Skyline Ventures. He sat in his home office in Atlanta, staring at a bank of computer monitors and legal documents. Next to him was his personal assistant, typing away in furious concentration. The Skyline Ventures board members were scattered across the country, each chiming in via video conference to finalize negotiations. "We have a crisis on our hands," one of the board members said, referencing Ebony's situation. "Social media chatter is already picking up. This is going to be a PR nightmare if we don't handle it carefully. We can't have a flight attendant racially profiling a passenger who just happens to be the daughter of a potential new investor." Edward leaned forward, his gaze steely. "This is more than just a PR problem. My daughter was humiliated and nearly had her future derailed. I'm all for finalizing the investment deal, but it has to come with assurances that we're going to see real change in the airline's culture. This kind of behavior cannot stand, and my family won't be associated with a company that allows it." A few board members murmured their agreement. Another tried to shift the conversation to numbers and share price. "We agree in principle, Mr. Rogers, but how much of a stake are you prepared to buy at this moment? We were looking at a phased approach, but the situation might require a quicker move." Edward glanced at his assistant, who gave a small nod. Then he looked back at the camera. "I'm prepared to acquire a controlling share if that's what it takes." "You want majority control?" someone asked, clearly startled. "That would effectively give you and Ebony enormous authority over operations." Edward nodded firmly. "That's correct. I'm not interested in a silent partnership. I want to ensure that my daughter and every passenger like her never has to endure such an experience again." A hush fell over the group. Edward and Skyline Ventures had been discussing a business partnership for weeks, but never this bold. Finally, the board members conferred privately in quick sidebars. After a flurry of legal disclaimers and a short recess to review documents, they reconvened. "We can move forward under these conditions," the head of Skyline Ventures announced, "but we'll need a public relations strategy in place immediately. We also need Ebony's sign-off, in a sense, since she'll be a recognized figure in the new leadership structure. The media will inevitably highlight her role." Edward breathed out slowly. "She's only 18. Let's not throw her into the deep end of corporate politics yet. But yes, Ebony should have a voice here. This deal is about more than numbers for me." The stage was set. Within an hour, the legal framework was signed digitally, pending final in-person signatures. The news spread like wildfire through Sky Traverse's upper echelons. A new controlling shareholder was stepping in, triggered by a scandal that threatened to overshadow the airline's future. Meanwhile, Ebony was escorted onto a small, sleek charter jet, courtesy of Sky Traverse's partner network. The seats were plush leather, the cabin staff all wearing polite smiles that tried too hard to reassure her. She felt a wave of relief, at least she'd make it to her ceremony on time. But she also felt uneasy, like she was stepping into a world that was reacting more to her father's money than to the principle of the matter. She settled into a window seat. A kindly flight attendant, Linda, approached with a gentle smile. "Good morning, Miss Rogers. Can I offer you something to drink? Tea, coffee, juice?" Ebony offered a polite, "No, thank you," as Linda gracefully took the hint that Ebony wasn't in the mood for chit-chat. Linda retreated to the galley, leaving Ebony alone with her thoughts. She kept replaying the events of the past hour in her mind, the flight attendant's snarling face, the public humiliation, the silent stares from the other passengers, the frantic calls to her father. Was it really possible that within 7 minutes of being kicked off the plane, her life had flipped from passenger to prospective part owner? It felt more like a wild dream than reality. As the private jet taxied onto the runway, Ebony said a quiet prayer. She prayed for strength to speak at her ceremony and do justice to the scholarship she'd earned. She prayed for the safety of all those still on the commercial flight, even the flight attendant who'd wronged her. Most of all, she prayed for a resolution that didn't warp her own moral compass. She didn't want revenge, she wanted accountability and dignity. Touching down at a private terminal in Los Angeles an hour ahead of schedule, Ebony was met by a black SUV arranged by the airline. She barely had time to marvel at the palm trees and sunshine before she was whisked away to the convention center where the Youth Innovation Ceremony was being held. She arrived just in time to slip into the backstage area, breathless and jittery. Event organizers greeted her with relieved expressions. "We were so worried about you. We heard there might be flight delays," one organizer said. Ebony managed a tight smile, not ready to recount her ordeal. Minutes later, Ebony was ushered onto the stage, where a large audience applauded politely. She stood behind a microphone, glancing over the sea of curious faces. She took a moment to steady her breath, then spoke about her design project, a cost-effective solar panel solution for underprivileged communities. She explained how she'd grown up seeing families in Atlanta struggle with high energy bills, which inspired her to create a more affordable, user-friendly product. The crowd hung on her words, especially as Ebony, in her measured and earnest tone, highlighted the potential for positive global impact. Thunderous applause erupted when she finished. Ebony felt a surge of emotion, relief, pride, and a lingering sense of shock that she'd made it here at all. Immediately after her speech, she was presented with a plaque and an oversized scholarship check. Camera flashes exploded around her, and she forced herself to smile. Even though she was overjoyed at her accomplishment, she couldn't shake the memory of that humiliating incident. In the back of her mind, Ebony was certain that once the ceremony was over, she'd have to deal with the Backstage, Ebony took a moment to rest. She scrolled through her phone and saw multiple missed calls and text messages from her father, as well as a series of news alerts. Her eyes widened as she skimmed the headlines. Shareholder shocker. Tech entrepreneur Edward Rogers takes controlling interest in Sky Traverse Airways. Allegations of racism spur. Corporate shakeup at major airline teen. Scholar kicked off flight. Father steps in to reform airline. She let out a shaky exhale. This was bigger than she'd imagined. Before she could panic further, her phone rang again. It was her father. She stepped into a quiet hallway and picked up. "Congratulations, Ebony," he said warmly. "I'm proud of you for your speech and for handling that incident with grace. Listen, things are moving fast. We've secured a controlling share in Sky Traverse." Ebony sank onto a folding chair, trying to absorb the news. "So it's official?" she asked. "We own part of the airline." "We own most of it," Edward corrected gently. "Skyline Ventures and I collectively hold the majority. They're giving me, and by extension you, significant sway in decision-making." "Now about that flight attendant," Ebony cut in quietly. "Dad, I don't want to be vindictive, but I also can't let her just do that to someone else. What's the plan? Edward sighed. We're scheduling an emergency meeting with the airline's executive leadership in Los Angeles tomorrow. They want you there, Ebony. They've asked if you'd be willing to join a press conference, but I understand if that's too much. The idea of standing in front of a swarm of reporters terrified Ebony. She was only 18, a kid who just wanted to design solutions for environmental and social problems. She'd never imagined stepping into a corporate war zone. But a voice within her whispered that she had a responsibility now, not just to herself, but to others who might face similar discrimination. "All right," she said softly. "I'll do it." That evening, Ebony was provided a luxurious hotel suite, courtesy of Sky Travis. She gazed at the city lights of Los Angeles through floor-to-ceiling windows, her mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. In one sense, she was thankful to have the resources to right such a wrong. On the other hand, the entire ordeal reminded her of stories her grandfather used to tell, how easily a black person could be singled out and persecuted with little recourse. She recalled a memory from grade school when a teacher refused to let Ebony join the advanced science club because the teacher assumed Ebony wouldn't fit in. That incident lit a fire under Ebony to excel academically, proving any doubters wrong. Now she had been humiliated on a grander stage, but she also had the power to shape change. Sinking into an oversized armchair, Ebony flipped open her portfolio, the same one that flight attendant had insisted she stow away. She ran her fingers over the pages of sketches and data that had become her life's work, her sense of identity. A wave of resolve washed over her. She wouldn't waste the chance to speak out. She might be young, but she had a voice, and now a platform. She spent the rest of the night drafting notes for the press conference, focusing on the bigger issues of discrimination, corporate accountability, and the importance of ethical business practices. Before finally crawling into bed, Ebony allowed a small smile. In less than 24 hours, her life had been flipped upside down, but maybe, just maybe, it was leading somewhere important. The next morning, Ebony met her father in the lobby of the hotel. They rode together to Sky Traverse's regional headquarters in downtown Los Angeles, a sleek glass building that reflected the palm trees along the boulevard. Edward squeezed Ebony's hand supportively as they walked toward an executive conference room where a collection of suited men and women waited. Inside, Ebony felt a surge of nerves. She recognized Darius Gray from the airport, standing off to the side, looking tense. A tall woman with a commanding presence stepped forward. "Mr. Rogers, Miss Rogers, thank you for coming. I'm Janice Morgan, Chief Operating Officer of Sky Traverse Airways." She extended a hand to Ebony, and they exchanged polite introductions. Janice gestured to a long conference table, inviting them to sit. Then she cleared her throat. "Before we discuss policy changes and next steps, I want to personally apologize for the distress Miss Rogers experienced. We are conducting an internal investigation regarding the flight attendant in question. She's been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome." Ebony nodded. She appreciated the sentiment, but knew this was just the start. She glanced at her father, who gave her a slight nod to speak her mind. "I'm not here for revenge," Ebony said, her voice resonating in the hush of the boardroom. "I'm here because what happened to me is part of a bigger problem. It's about how people in positions of authority treat those they perceive as less than, whether it's because of race, age, or any other factor. I don't want anyone else to face that kind of humiliation or have their future jeopardized." The room was silent. A few of the executives had the grace to look embarrassed. Janice Morgan swallowed hard and responded, "We absolutely agree. We're prepared to institute new, mandatory training for all cabin crew, with a focus on anti-discrimination and de-escalation techniques. Also, we'll create a streamlined passenger complaint escalation process to ensure incidents like this are flagged and investigated promptly." Edward chimed in, "We appreciate that, but words aren't enough. We want to see a measurable policy in place. Any flight attendant found to be discriminating against a passenger should face not just retraining, but potential termination. We can't afford any grey areas where bigotry might hide. Janice nodded earnestly. Understood. We'll work with legal and HR to draft these new terms immediately. Just as the meeting was wrapping up, there was a commotion at the door. A flustered staff member entered, whispering something in Janice's ear. Janice's eyes widened and she turned to Ebony. It appears the flight attendant, Ms. Hill, is here at the office. She's demanding to speak with you. Ebony felt her stomach twist. She glanced at her father, unsure how to proceed. Edward studied Ebony, letting her decide. She inhaled sharply, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to avoid the confrontation entirely, but another part felt that this was her moment to stand firm. "Let her in," Ebony finally said, her voice calm. Moments later, the door opened and in walked C. Hill, still in uniform. Her eyes darted around the room, and Ebony noticed the anger and desperation etched into the woman's features. For a split second, Ebony felt a pang of empathy. This woman's world had likely turned upside down too. "See," Hill spoke in a rush. "I just came from HR. They said I'm on administrative leave without pay. Are you behind this?" She glared at Ebony, then at Edward. Edward remained silent, letting Ebony speak. Ebony steadied herself. "You are on leave," Ebony said quietly, "because of how you treated me on that plane. You singled me out, humiliated me, and removed me without a valid reason." "That's not true," the flight attendant insisted, her voice trembling. "You were on your phone, disobeying instructions. I was doing my job." Her eyes flicked to the executives, searching for support. "If we're not strict, the FAA will hold us accountable. I had to ensure compliance." Ebony felt a stab of anger. Other passengers were also using their phones. "You targeted me. You kept coming back to harass me. It wasn't about safety, it felt personal." Hill opened her mouth to retort, but one of the company lawyers stepped forward. "Ms. Hill, please remember this matter is under official investigation. Anything you say can be used in that investigation." For a moment, Ebony and the flight attendant locked eyes. Ebony could almost see the woman's defenses crumble as she realized the gravity of the situation. Her voice faltered. I have a family to feed. If I lose my job..." Ebony felt tears prick at the corners of her own eyes, recalling her mother's struggles when Ebony was younger. She took a deep breath. "I'm not trying to ruin your life, Ms. Hill," Ebony said gently. "I'm demanding accountability for what you did. If you're truly remorseful, I hope you'll learn from this. But I will not pretend it didn't happen." C. Hill said nothing, standing there as though rooted to the spot, tears threatening to spill. The company lawyer escorted her out a moment later. A tense silence gripped the room. Ebony felt a swirl of emotions: anger, pity, relief, sadness. Eventually, Janice Morgan cleared her throat. "We'll proceed with the investigation, and discipline will follow as our policies dictate. Shall we move on to the press conference?" Ebony nodded, still shaken. Her father offered her a supportive hand, and they stood, ready to face the media. Outside, a small army of cameras, microphones and reporters waited in a cordoned-off section of the lobby. Sky Traverse's PR team bustled about, making last-minute adjustments to the stage. When Ebony emerged, flanked by her father and Janice Morgan, a tide of chatter swelled. Photographers snapped pictures as Ebony took her seat at a long table with a microphone. Janice opened the conference, apologizing to Ebony publicly and outlining the airline's upcoming policy changes. She promised a zero-tolerance stance on discrimination. Then she turned the microphone over to Edward Rogers, who spoke about his new investment role in the airline and his intention to make immediate improvements. Finally, Ebony was invited to speak. She took a shaky breath, remembering the supportive applause she'd received at her award ceremony. This crowd felt different, more cynical, searching for scandal. But Ebony spoke from the heart. "Yesterday, I was kicked off a flight for reasons I believe were racially motivated. It humiliated me. I felt powerless and afraid, something too many people experience when traveling. I don't want special treatment. I want equal treatment for everyone, regardless of race, age or background. My father and I are now in a position to influence how this airline operates, but this moment isn't just about me. It's about every passenger who's ever been mistreated and had no voice. It's about ensuring that from the top levels of management to the newest flight attendant, everyone understands that discrimination has no place in the skies. Sky Traverse is instituting new policies. We'll hold individuals accountable, but we also hope to build a culture where passengers and crew treat each other with respect. If we succeed, we'll have turned a painful experience into a catalyst for positive change. Thank you. She stopped, her heart pounding. The reporters fired off questions, but Sky Traverse PR staff signaled that Ebony wouldn't take any further inquiries. They guided Ebony off stage. As Ebony walked away, she heard the roar of cameras and hushed speculation behind her. A staff member whispered that her statement was trending on social media, with many praising her composure and bravery. Ebony felt a swirl of relief and exhaustion, eager to step away from the spotlight. Over the next few days, Ebony remained in Los Angeles, while Sky Traverse lawyers hammered out details. She was asked to participate in planning sessions focused on improving customer experience. The weight of adult responsibility pressed on Ebony. She was only 18, yet being asked to weigh in on multi-million-dollar decisions. One afternoon, she visited a local community center in South Los Angeles. She wanted some solace, away from corporate boardrooms and media scrutiny. She found herself in a cramped workshop where students tinkered with 3D printers to create small, solar-powered devices. Ebony introduced herself quietly, not wanting fanfare, and sat among them, discussing design ideas. Their youthful enthusiasm and creativity reminded her of why she fell in love with design in the first place. That evening, Ebony had dinner with her father. He looked tired, worn down by days of negotiations and media interviews, but when he looked at Ebony, his eyes shone with pride. "You've handled all of this with more grace than most seasoned executives," he told her. Ebony twirled a French fry, her appetite sapped by stress. "I never wanted to be an executive, Dad," she admitted. "I just want to design solutions to help people. This corporate world is intense." He nodded sympathetically. "We can figure out a balance. You don't have to run the airline. We'll hire professionals, but what you did speaking out, standing your ground, was necessary. Now this airline has a chance to become something better, and you can continue your studies." Ebony smiled gratefully, comforted by the reminder that her real passion was still waiting for her in college. Meanwhile, the official investigation into Flight Attendant C, Hill concluded. The final report cited multiple passenger statements and confirmed Ebony's account. The airline found that Hill had shown racial bias, acted outside standard protocol, and escalated a minor issue into a major confrontation. As a result, the company terminated her employment. Under normal circumstances, that might have been the end of it. But her case gained notoriety as Ebony's story dominated headlines. Some civil rights groups even issued statements condemning the rise of sky racism. At first, Hill tried to defend herself publicly, claiming Ebony was a disruptive passenger. But passenger cell phone footage emerged online, showing Ebony quietly complying while Hill grew increasingly agitated. In the face of this evidence, Hill's legal counsel advised her to cease interviews. She soon disappeared from public view. The last Ebony heard, Hill had been blacklisted from most major airlines, making it nearly impossible for her to find another flight attendant job. Some on social media gloated, reveling in the poetic justice that Ebony now partially owned the airline that fired her. Ebony felt torn. She didn't rejoice in another person's downfall, but she couldn't deny that it was just consequences for hateful behavior. She also knew the incident would serve as a warning for others who believed they could discriminate without repercussions. A month later, Ebony was back in Atlanta, preparing for her move to college in the fall. She sat in her bedroom, half-packed boxes scattered around her. Her phone chimed an email from Janice Morgan at Sky Traverse. Subject: Progress Report. Thank you. Message: Dear Miss Rogers, I'm pleased to share the latest developments in our anti-discrimination training. We've successfully launched a new module, requiring all employees to undergo it within the next 60 days. We've also created a passenger feedback portal to handle complaints swiftly. I wanted you to know this was directly inspired by your courage. Thank you for pushing us toward a better standard. Sincerely, Janice Morgan, COO, Sky Traverse Airways. Ebony smiled. The email was a testament that real change was happening and that her voice mattered. A knock on her bedroom door made her look up. Regina peeked in. Hey baby, how are you feeling? Ebony closed her laptop. Honestly, relieved that I get to be a college student and not a full-time airline mogul, and proud that something good might come from all this. Her mother nodded, sitting on the edge of the bed. I'm proud of you too. It's been a wild ride. They shared a moment of comfortable silence, reflecting on everything that had happened in such a short span of time. Finally, Ebony said, You know, I might still use that frequent flyer pass they gave me to get to campus visits and maybe even do a study abroad next year. Regina laughed. You'll fly for free on the airline you practically own. I think that's the least they can do. Later that summer, Ebony flew to her new campus for an orientation program. She used Sky Traverse, stepping onto the plane with her carry-on and her precious portfolio. The moment she boarded, the cabin crew greeted her with warm smiles. Welcome aboard, Miss Rogers, they said, eyes flicking to her name on the manifest. We're honored to have you. Ebony felt a rush of gratitude that drowned out any lingering trauma from her earlier experience. She found her seat and tucked her portfolio safely under the seat in front of her. She thought about the policies now in place, the new training sessions, and the possibility that fewer travelers would face discrimination in the future. That, to her, was worth any corporate turmoil. As the plane ascended into a clear blue sky, Ebony let her eyes drift over the clouds. The rhythmic hum of the engines lulled her into a sense of hope. She remembered the day not too long ago when she was kicked off a plane in front of everyone, tears stinging her eyes. She remembered that desperate call to her father, the fear, the anger, and the disbelief. And now, here she was, an owner of the airline, a future college freshman, and a young woman determined to make a difference. She closed her eyes, letting the moment wash over her. She wouldn't let one hateful encounter define her. Instead, she turned it into an opportunity to reform an entire airline, using the leverage her father had and the indomitable spirit she possessed. No, Ebony Rogers wasn't just a teenage girl with a scholarship. She was a force for change in an industry that spanned continents and cultures. And as she soared westward, the sunset blazing across the horizon, Ebony felt the profound sense that her journey was only just beginning.